Welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thank you for tuning in from wherever and however you're tuning in with us today. My name is Caleb Talley with the Startup Junkie Foundation, and I'm joined by my colleagues and friends, Tom Douglas and Darian Harris with the Fuel Accelerator. And we're going to meet another round of Fuel Accelerator cohort companies. What can we expect to hear today?
Yeah, we're excited to introduce you guys to the second batch of our Fuel cohort companies. We've got 9 companies in the area for the 12-week program, and so you're going to see the rest of those companies really dive into what they've learned about Northwest Arkansas, what they've learned about business in the area, and hopefully you'll hear some excitement about sticking around for the future.
Yeah, that's the really exciting part, because I think that all of them really appreciate the area and what it brings to not only them personally, but to their businesses. So it's going to be really exciting. Thanks for being here.
All right, we are excited to kick off the start of our Fuel series for the Startup Junkies podcast. My name is Grace Gill, and I'm here with Louis Diesel and Kannan from Siemba. Kannan, why don't you give us a little bit about your background, and we're excited to have you on.
Yep. Thank you, Grace. First of all, my huge gratitude to Fuel and the Bentonville community for having us. My name is Kannan. I'm from Atlanta, originally from India. I'm the founder and CEO of Siemba, and we are in the cybersecurity space, helping organizations build large-scale testing programs.
Very cool. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about your technology and kind of the problem that you're solving and what got you into the cybersecurity space?
So I'll answer that by telling how I got into the space. So I've been a product manager, and I was a product manager in the cybersecurity space with the Home Depot. And Home Depot is a pretty large enterprise. And with very large enterprises, they typically have a large asset base, which means your IT infrastructure, your web applications, mobile applications, right? And they keep on releasing software on a very regular basis. Now, in the current world where a cyber attack is happening every 39 seconds, you need to make sure that you are protecting your infrastructure and your applications from these attacks. And the best way to ensure that you don't get attacked is to test yourself, is to attack yourself. Now, for that purpose, you hire cybersecurity ethical hackers, and you can get a team of hackers or multiple vendor teams of hackers, and they can come in and test your software, maybe like 1 application, 10 applications, 20 applications. But when you get into thousands of applications, when you get into really large-scale organizations, it becomes a challenge to do this and maintain real-time visibility into what's happening and what your risk posture is. So there is a scale problem. Now, there is also a talent problem, because the whole world has a very limited number of ethical hackers, less than 200,000. So how do you deploy this talent in the most appropriate way so that you are able to optimize your return on mitigation, through cybersecurity testing? So I mentioned about the scale problem and the talent problem. So these are the 2 problems that we are solving through Siemba and the platform that we have built. So 2 ways of solving for this. The first way is to build in automation and efficiencies to the existing processes, which will help accelerate the whole testing cycle, life cycle. And the second way is through autonomous testing, where the platform by itself will do a huge volume of testing, which will ensure basic checks and balances, basic security hygiene, which does 2 things. One is that it helps companies gain more coverage over their asset landscape. 2, it helps them to do it at a reduced cost. And 3, it helps them do it in a much more faster manner.
So can you give us a little bit of background on maybe some of the experiences that you've had so far, or can you share some situations of certain companies that you've maybe been able to meet with, if you're allowed to share any details on that, and then kind of explain what those engagements were like and some of the things that you expect in the future? Yeah,
so we were able to showcase our technology to a large player here in the Bentonville area. We were able to demonstrate the capabilities as well as talk about the future roadmap. They are very interested in what we are building and would like to stay engaged. So it's a very early stage conversation. I do have similar conversations lined up with few other organizations here as well. But overall, the feedback has been very positive, very encouraging. They have the problem that we are solving. So there seems to be a fit, and looking forward to exploring.
So as you look at Fuel, and if you compare it to other programs, or if you were to try to approach a lot of these large customers and potential partners independently, what do you think Fuel does that's more helpful or that's different compared to, like I said, other programs, or if you were trying to do it from an independent approach?
So Luis, I haven't been part of other programs, so I can't speak for that. But with Fuel, what I've noticed is that just being under the umbrella of Fuel lends enormous credibility to whatever you're building and showcasing. So, and just being by being part of Fuel Cohort, we have been able to get so many introductions in the Bentonville area. But I'm also seeing that the fact that we are part of the Fuel program has been resonating in other markets as well. Like when we talk to be it customers or investors or prospective investors or partners, when they see that you're part of the Fuel AI/ML cohort, which is funded by the Walton Family Foundation and the Arkansas Economic Development Council, that adds a certain kind of credibility which is not usual. And the other piece that this is a program, it is a no equity, no fee program, which offers tremendous value to those who are participating. So I would say it's been an incredible honor for Siemba to have been selected to this program and been part of this for the last 8 weeks.
We're happy to have you. I'll pass it along to Grace.
Absolutely. We're definitely excited to have you as part of the cohort. And now that you've been in Northwest Arkansas for about 7 or 8 weeks, what can you say about the ecosystem here? What has been unique to you, and what have you enjoyed about being in Bentonville? And then kind of the last piece, which will kind of help wrap up this segment, is, what is the last part that you're wanting to get out of the area, and what do you see being next for Siemba?
Okay. So the first question was about the ecosystem. First part of your question was about the ecosystem. And I remember Tom and Darian mentioning that think about Bentonville like where Austin was 10 years or 15 years back, right? I think it's certainly like that, but more advanced than that. And the Fuel Accelerator, Startup Junkie, all of you are actually catalyzing that process here and bringing together all the different players in the space in a meaningful manner. Positively contributing to all the startups involved. That is a big thing, and that is one of the biggest differentiators that I am seeing as part of this program. The second question was around the people, right?
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So around the people, I think one of the things that strikes me the most is the authenticity and the genuineness of the people. From day one till now, everyone has been nothing but very kind, supportive, and you really feel that they are here to help you. And we need all the help that we can get at this stage. So I really appreciate that being available here. And thirdly, you were asking about like what do I want to do here going forward. I think it's all about building relationships and being connected, adding value to the community here, as well as like seeing what opportunities are there for Siemba and our team to grow here. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Kannan, for being on the podcast, but also for being a part of the Fuel Cohort. We love having you a part of it, so thank you.
Yep.
Once a member of the Fuel Cohort, always a member of the Fuel Cohort.
Awesome.
That runs true.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Luis. And thanks to the Fuel Accelerator program. Okay,
and we'd like to welcome another Fuel member, Mike Romeri from Analytics2Go. And I'm Tom Douglas with EIR for Fuel Accelerator, and my partner, Darian Harris.
So, Mike, talk a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are today, and then what led you to start Analytics2Go.
Okay, thanks, Darian. I was a management consultant focused on supply chain operations, and we primarily dealt with process and organizational issues. And toward the end of my tenure, 25 years, our managing partner asked me to IT enable our solutions. the course of doing that, I met a professor from MIT named David Simke-Levy, who had some early versions of AI, essentially, that were related to network optimization. And had a dinner and ended up selling a project to 3M a few weeks later. Then he participated, and we ended up doing a lot of projects together. We eventually started a company called Ops Rules. And Ops Rules was an AI consulting firm that we ran for 4 years, and we did a lot of work with pricing and optimization. We sold that to Accenture. And when we were at Accenture, I knew I wasn't going to be there very long, but I wanted to understand what kind of opportunities there might be for another company. And what I realized was that their approach to analytics or data science at that time really focused on a lot of ERP-style content or approaches where they required their customers or their clients to re-engineer their process and to significantly change their IT landscape. So when we formed A2Go, our objectives were to simplify the use of AI by allowing people to take advantage of the power of AI without having to do process re-engineering and without having to change their IT landscape. And that's what brought us to A2Go.
That's great. You know, and I know you've landed a couple of big accounts. And what do you think provides the ROI that's important to companies these days when it comes to your application?
That's a great question. It's very clear. It's either the elimination of pain or the addition of revenue. And so two great examples of that. We have one large food company who has 300,000 customers, and about half of them are in a loyalty program. Loyalty program consists of them providing value-added services to the customers in exchange for a variety of different levels of pricing. And it was a mess. So how do you administer something like that? And it's a long story, but in the end, we were able to classify all 150,000 customers into 158 groups where there was a recommended set of value-added services and an associated price list that made sense. And so it achieved their outcome, which was to provide their customers with the services they need and be compensated fairly for what they were providing. Another example would be with the same company. They're a company that does a lot of beef production. And all of their human intelligence efforts were focused on select meat. And that represents 50% of the value of a cow, but only 15% of the meat. So they had 58 processing plants that were really focused on finding the best possible outcome or outlet for their product. They really weren't trying to optimize, and there's a lot of complexity with regard to the cost to serve and the freight issues, et cetera. So again, a long story short, we were able to create each week a list of optimized markets and customers and prices for each of 56 operating plants so that it optimized their revenue for $2.5 billion worth of revenue.
Outstanding.
Yeah. So one of the things we love to talk about is Northwest Arkansas, and I think we spend a lot of time getting out and about, seeing all the different sites, and we've probably hit almost every restaurant in Bentonville,
right.
which I hope that you have enjoyed, and the rest
Absolutely.
of the cohort. Talk a little bit about your experience so far in Northwest Arkansas. What kind of surprised you? You're coming from Florida, which I think everyone loves Florida, enjoys going there, but coming from there to here, what did you kind of see that you didn't expect?
I certainly, everyone knows Walmart is here. And so there's a level of sophistication with Walmart. But I think the entire ecosystem is a very high-performing ecosystem. And I think there's sort of a community of interest here where people are trying to optimize the performance of the entire ecosystem. And it brings a lot of sophistication and certain set of skill sets that are cooperative and innovative, and people know how to get things done.
That's great.
So certainly there's been a lot going on with Fuel, and the cohorts got along real well. What can you say about the Fuel program and the cohort members that you're going to take away from this as something that you remember for a long time?
I have to tell you, I just had another meeting with somebody that Darian introduced me to, and he asked me a sort of a tongue-in-cheek question. He says, well, is the Fuel program really like an adult summer camp? And I said, in the sense that summer camp is about renewal, it is, because you get a chance to get away from your normal, pace, and you talk to peers who are facing similar but not the same problems at different times in different ways, and so it just gives you access to a lot of good, clean thinking that you probably couldn't have come on your own, and certainly not as easily as you get it here. And so that's very good, and the exchange has been very helpful. And I think the program covers a lot of territory. And no matter how good your team is, you don't have people who know every subject. And so to the extent that you hit a topic like product management or product development, where you're not necessarily so strong, or pricing where you're not necessarily so strong, you get a real state-of-the-art look of what can be done, and it allows you to do a gap analysis for where you are and where you should be. So it's been very helpful and very useful experience so far.
Well, good. It's been a pleasure to have you. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you, and your family was able to come in town. I still haven't gotten you on a bike yet, but trust me, it's safe.
That's not what I understand, but
Yeah. No, that's good.
So how do we stay in touch with you, and how does the community stay in touch with you as you move forward after the cohort's over?
Well, I'm bringing 4 team members here for 2 weeks in the second half of October. So we're really serious about opening an office here. We need to get traction. And so I think we have a solution that works really well for Walmart suppliers. And I think I need to talk to people and get a few people to adopt and benefit. And my dream for the future is that people want to work at the supplier that's using A2Go solutions, so that I can get home in time to have dinner with my kids, because it'll make the job a lot easier and more effective.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Well, we really appreciate you being here for the Fuel Cohort.
My pleasure.
And wish you all the success in the world.
Thank you very much.
All right, and now we have Humphrey Chen with CLIPr here with us today. My name is Caleb Talley with the Startup Junkie team, joined by Louis Diesel, also with Startup Junkie. We're excited to have Humphrey here on this segment of the podcast. How's it going?
Good.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll jump into the conversation. Tell us a little bit about kind of the genesis of CLIPr and your entrepreneurial journey, and just kind of some of that backstory.
Yeah, so it was probably like May of 2020, and at that point everyone was locked down, and I reached out to catch up with Cindy, who became my co-founder. And back then, we normally get caught up in the very beginning, and the first thing she told me was that she was working down her video backlog. And I was like, oh, well, what do you mean by that? And because I was thinking Netflix or something, and she's like, no, it's like my Zoom, I missed the earnings call, I missed the conference thing. And so the second I heard the idea of like a backlog that's like work related, like a light bulb moment went off in my head, because like I knew exactly what solution could be built to actually make that searchable, so that she could just get what she needed in a fraction of the time. And at that point I reached out to Aaron, who ended up becoming my co-founder and CTO, and said, hey, can you build an MVP? And at the time, the very first name for CLIPr was Zoogle. So I wanted to make a play off of Google, and the W stood for Web, and WebEx, and the Z for Zoom. That name was only temporary, but it got the idea across. And when I met up with Aaron, he basically said, hey, why don't you put together requirements document, and I can tell you how much it'll cost to build. And so Memorial Day weekend 2020, I pulled an all-nighter, and on Wednesday he told me how much that would cost. And at that point, the next person I went to was my section mate in business school, who actually worked at Google. His name is Elliot, and I told him what we were thinking about making. And then his first reaction was like, oh man, I'm fiduciarily conflicted, because it's my job now to persuade you to join the Area 120 Google Startup Incubator, but then as your friend, that's not necessarily the best advice. But then he said the next best thing I could do is get approval from the Google ethics and compliance team to invest in you and do more if you want. And so I was like, wow, that's like actually perfect, feedback. And then the next person I went to was my business school professor. And when I told him what CLIPr was all about, he, by the way, had just finished co-writing the book Competing in the Age of AI. And so 10 minutes into the pitch, he's like, I'm in. And I'm like, what do you mean you're in? He's like, where do you want me to wire the 100,000? And I was like, well, we're not even incorporated yet. So
Maybe check out the cash.
That first 100 ended up turning into 1.8 million over the next couple of months, and that was basically the pre-seed round. And so that's how CLIPr came into being. It ended up being pandemic opportunistic.
Awesome. Well, tell us exactly what CLIPr does.
Yeah, so we help you define the most important moments inside of your recorded video. And we do that by making it searchable, making it skimmable, and then now with CLIPr GPT, queryable. So you can ask for what you need, and then we'll actually give you the answer. And so the operating premise is that, if you only care about 5% of a video, we want you to find that 5% as quickly as possible. If there's another 5% you didn't know you need to know, we want to give you the tools to find that other 5%. So if you get 10% utility, we actually view that as mission accomplished because it's 10 more than the average of 0. It also means that you didn't have to painfully wade through the other 90%.
So essentially taking what Google and the search engine did to an encyclopedia to find what you need. And I've heard that compared to going from jet skiing on the top of the surface of the ocean to scuba diving into your content. So so basically the contents of video and audio tend to be blind spots on the web. And so when we make it indexed and we make it searchable, it suddenly becomes like more accessible. And so for us now, like big companies at this point have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of hours of video and audio. And most of it actually is not that useful because it actually has a very short shelf life. And so CLIPr is actually focused on that top 20 to 30% of that video, which actually spans the training department in terms of leadership and development and onboarding, but it also includes the marketing department for elevating relevant A-roll content from B-roll because there's like 100 minutes of B-roll for every 1 minute of A-roll. And then in sales, partnerships, and BD, there's a lot of external facing content that now gets recorded. And if you're a CRO or head of sales, you want to find out what the blockers are and what the showstoppers are, and make that sales cycle be as tight as possible. And then if you happen to be a product-facing company, the R&D, the engineering team can also listen and see the voice of the customer and look for certain trends. So at this point for CLIPr, we're very much focused on unlocking video insights, and we're also focused on eliminating video overload. So at the more senior leadership levels, it becomes unwieldy and unmanageable, and we actually are focused on making it actionable cross-platform. Doesn't matter whether it's Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google, YouTube, Vimeo, we support it all.
Very cool. So I'll take over from Caleb a little bit. It's my understanding that you have some enterprise background as well. And so, as you know, Fuel is all about selling into the enterprise environment, being located here in Northwest Arkansas with all the enterprise players. So, one, can you tell us a little bit of your background within the enterprise world? And then two, as you're selling into enterprises, does that give you an advantage with that enterprise background? And then what would you tell other startups that maybe don't have that enterprise background, if there is some kind of advantage that you may have from that experience?
So my background, besides Amazon, also includes Verizon Wireless, or just Verizon, also Avaya, the PBX desk phone company, and then also Microsoft. So I actually, the majority of my career is actually in big companies, and it's actually the bookends have been startups. And so the one advantage in general of having had this corporate experience is that most startup people only know the startup world, and they assume that startup people or corporate people think just like startup people, and when in fact that's not the case at all. And so if you've seen Matrix, it's like one of those things where, for me, having been in the startup world and then going into the corporate world and then learning how things actually happen in the corporate world. Like, I remember when I joined Microsoft, the GM told me, he came to my desk early on and he basically said, Humphrey, all the stuff that you're used to doing in the startup world, park that off to the side, because you're now going to be focused on taking ideas and getting other people to do what you want. And that's a totally different skill. They're related, but it's different. And so for me, that was like, well, that's a shock because I'm used to like just making it happen by myself. And so, and once you're in the corporate world, you start to realize that everyone ends up, for the most part, focusing on what they're measured by and what their boss cares about. And sometimes that's what the customer cares about, but sometimes it's also not what the customer cares about. And so people play politics, people focus on what the boss cares about or focus on what the boss's boss cares about. There's personalities that actually want to blend in the woodwork and not rock the boat. And so all these kind of corporate personalities end up only being understood by someone who actually used to be a startup guy who actually is now in this enterprise world. And so for me, it ends up being a big advantage because I actually can relate to the enterprise personality types, and I also know how to empower and evangelize and make that happen. But by the same token, when I'm back out in the startup world, I still know how to make it happen in the real world, which is yet another different skill. And so, and I think really the nice benefit of the Fuel program in general is that the cohort members who haven't been in the corporate world get their eyes, turned wide open to understand and benefit from the corporate gatekeepers that understand the fact that the two worlds are very different. So having that ability to bridge those two worlds ends up being like gold for the startup entrepreneurs that don't have the enterprise experience, right? Because you just don't know what you don't know, right?
Mm-hmm. And kind of segueing off that, how has your experience in Fuel been, and how has your experience in Northwest Arkansas specifically been?
Yeah, no, it's been really awesome. I think for me, the first half of the year I felt like was overly remote, and I didn't have the same opportunity to build and develop and establish relationships. And so the second half of the year, which basically involves the Fuel and being here in Arkansas, I basically told myself that, hey, I need to invest in building relationships. I need to, and I actually wanted to like expand our reach because our customers right now are in the Northeast and they're on the West Coast, but we didn't have anything in the heartland. And so I think this ended up being kind of like a really perfect opportunity. And I do feel like with our cohort that I have like 10 new best friends, and we're all in different areas, but each of us were independently doing our own journeys. And now Fuel has like brought us together. And so we have more people to be joining us and sharing the journey, which, when you're a founder, like, it can be lonely. And so you have family, but, there's only so much that you end up talking about work at home. And so, and this is like one of those things where Northwest Arkansas hadn't been on my personal to-do list. But now that I'm here, I feel like I've been marketing the whole region. And so, now more people are planning on coming here and checking it out. And, I'm happy to be like an evangelizer for the region because, it's actually very charming. And the people are authentic and very helpful.
It's awesome. So with all that enterprise background, were you familiar with the Northwest Arkansas ecosystem before you came here, or when you heard about all these big companies? I mean, what did you think of Northwest Arkansas before you actually came here, or had you heard about it before? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I only knew about it superficially. I think one of my section mates used to be the CEO of the Walton Enterprises here, so I knew about it anecdotally. And for me, honestly, I didn't know that much.
Right. We want to just candidly kind of what your thoughts were.
I didn't know what to expect, but it obviously vastly exceeded my expectations.
So what do you think you could tell people that were maybe in your shoes that hadn't heard of Northwest Arkansas before, that are maybe already in large corporate environments on the East Coast or the West Coast? What can you kind of tell them that they may be surprised once they get here and see for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think for them, the key is to have an open mind, and be open to the possibility. And so for folks who end up kind of having blinders on, it ends up being a real liability and disadvantage. And I think for this region, viewing this as a destination to just fly by and go in and go out, as opposed to like a community to be a part of and to contribute and to help it grow. It's a difference between like having business here or not having business here, and so it's not good to just view it as like a transactional place. It actually, I actually view it as it's very up and coming, and it's growing a lot, and it's actually I do love it.
Very cool. for folks who are on the outside looking in, there's opportunity to grow with it too.
Yeah.
How can our listeners, learn more about what you're working on, learn more about you, connect potentially moving forward?
Yeah, you can reach me through email, h@clipr.ai, and then I think the best way to actually experience CLIPr is to create a free account, try it out, and when you get your own video enriched by CLIPr, you end up seeing the power of what it can do, because CLIPr candidly ends up being a tool, a technology that you didn't know you needed because you didn't know was possible, that it exists, and that it was this easy to use and this reasonably priced. And so that's a lot of unknowns. And so for like an emerging startup, awareness and education and evangelism are the most useful things for us. And seeing, trying, and using is believing, and that's kind of like our hope is for everyone to try it and like it, and can't imagine life without it.
Maybe the first 20 signups after this podcast can get a discounted premium account.
We'll send them.
Check the show notes just in case.
Referral, whatever the website is /LOUIS, and send the check.
Lewis is looking for kickbacks.
But I actually have been to the website, and it is something that we all recommend all of you guys to use. So.
Well, we're glad you're here. I'm glad you're participating in Fuel, and I hope we can keep you in the region as long as possible. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much.
Absolutely.
Hey, everybody. Great to be here. My name's Tom Douglas. I'm the entrepreneur in residence for the Fuel Accelerator, along with my friend and partner, Louis Diesel, from the Korean division of Startup Junkie Foundation. And with us, we have Somya Munjal from Youthful Savings, a member of the Fuel Accelerator, and great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about how you got here.
I begged you to be here. Well, I used to work for Walmart, and when I did a deep dive on the last 10 years of building out Youthful Savings, I really thought about the amazing leaders that I had at Walmart. And it's I have a storied past when it comes to working at corporates, and I never said anything bad about Walmart. So I thought it'd be really cool to build our growth in leadership that really understood compassion, collaboration, and contribution, which is our big 3 C's. And just any leadership that I have in me, I think I really learned through the culture in Northwest Arkansas. And so it's been really nice to be back here 11 years later, building out what I hope is a great company.
Awesome. I'll kind of take over. So just tell us a little bit more about your product. And I know it's a little bit less traditional compared to a lot of the other companies that are here that are mainly software based. Mm-hmm. So if you could just tell us a little bit more about kind of who your main customers are, why are they using your product, and why are they using yours as opposed to other solutions?
Good question. So we have an ed tech called Learning Marketplace, where young people can learn skill sets in business, finance, technology, sustainability, arts, all things that aren't typically taught inside the school system. And then we are really big into applying the knowledge that they're learning. And so we also started something called the Youthful Savings Marketplace. So that's a business platform where young people can get their actual business started. And then because I'm a CPA and there's 3 other board members that are CPAs, we got really good at figuring out taxes. And so we typically work on government contracts inside cities that are working on solving workforce development issues. And our platform, our business platform, will actually remit sales taxes back to the city. So some of our other competitors aren't at that level yet, but we can give them an ROI. So not only can we engage young people, make them better, citizens of the city, and also contribute back to the city, but there's actually a financial return for cities giving us some of these big contracts. And so right now we're working in 3 big cities, LA, Chicago, New York, and we're really excited to hopefully expand in Northwest Arkansas as well. We think that this is kind of becoming a coast, just with the business acumen that's here. And I think we're always very interested in solving issues at all times. And so because this is 49th in nation in education, we really want to help bridge that gap, right? And really provide skills development and just economic empowerment, and we can make that happen.
So it's interesting. You talk about Northwest Arkansas. You've come back after 11 years.
I have.
How is it different, and what do you see here that makes you happy to be back?
I just texted somebody and said, it's so down to earth for being so high in skills. And I love that. I think that, we're all human, and that's one of the, when someone gives me that comment that like you're a down to earth person, it makes me so happy. You can call me a lot of different names, but if you called me pompous, I think I'd have a problem with it. And I just think that there's so many great people here, and it's an abundant place, but everybody has this like salt of the earth attitude, and you can just get so much more done when you go around that way of working. And just me hanging out on the coast so much, it's always nice to come back here and just feel more at home. I still like New York though, just because but I think that there's a lot that this place offers, and I think young people, specifically the ones that we're helping, could benefit from using their skill sets that they are learning through their ecosystem and bringing it to some of the multinationals that are here, and we're on that journey.
So going back to kind of the business questions, it sounds like your company touches all B2B, B2G, and B2C.
Yeah, it does, actually.
So talk to us a little bit more about how you triangulate all those sectors.
Great. It's a great question. So we get the majority of our young people, because we need access to young people, through B2G contracts. And that is like definitely the biggest layer of our P&L. But there is an angle where if we haven't grabbed you on the B2G side, you can come to our learning marketplace and just buy a youth subscription. And that's the B2C side. And then the B2B comes in as we're doing large programs. We'll work with different enterprises to be sponsors. We have innovation partners. So MasterCard is an innovation partner. So all of our young learners, not only are they learning skills, but they are also getting capital to get their business started. So it's a learn and earn model, and they get these prepaid MasterCards. And so they're our partner. If we do events, we'll bring in sponsors. We have like a corporate social responsibility fund, so sponsors can put money into that to kind of subsidize some of our government contracts. And what I kind of say is we don't hold any debt on our balance sheet. And one of the, we call Youthful savings, so that wouldn't be bad. But sometimes these B2G contracts can give you some headaches because, yes, they'll pay you, but they might not pay you until after you service the contract. So our corporate sponsors come in as a way to bridge that gap, and they can also then be a part of the life cycle of these young people and hopefully get some sort of ROI, whether that's in good PR or hopefully just like workforce, and actual like access to young people.
So what would you say like some of the main KPIs in return of using your service or product would B2B or B2G customers get?
So the B2G, which is the government's, is you actually get young people engaged in the community, which is exciting. We really do impact reports with all of our contracts, and so we measure young people before they are in our programming and then after, and 85% of our young people increase their business, finance, and tech skills, and 50% feel more comfortable getting a business started. And listen, if you can get a business started, you also have those transferable skills that'll hopefully make you a better employee somewhere. And then with B2B, I think we're still on that journey, to be honest with you. We haven't been incredibly great at figuring out how to service enterprise clients, and that's actually why we're here. So we're trying to figure that out.
That's great. You almost stole my question there. You were very enthusiastic about coming to Fuel, and we appreciate that. You've been enthusiastic since you got here. What about Fuel has been the best part of the experience or provided the most value to you?
Absolutely. So obviously, Tom, you're amazing. But no, I mean, so we were out last night and I was with a lot of the Fuel cohort, and I was just like, guys, you guys are some of the smartest people I know, right? And it was just really cool to have that like ability as a founder. It gets really lonely. I'm a single founder too. Like I lost my co-founders in this journey. And so it's been nice to be with other founders and just be able to speak the same language and also just build opportunities together, I think is really cool. But I do think the way that it's managed is really nice. Again, it's very down to earth. And that is something that I really look for in life. I think life's too short to be any other way. And I think the program not only has like high acumen growth that happens here, but I think the way that it's managed also entices like a humility that I appreciate.
What would you tell somebody that's thinking about maybe coming to Northwest Arkansas or not even exposed to Northwest Arkansas? What would you tell them to for future cohort members?
That's such a great question. Don't judge a book by its cover.
So what was the cover of this book?
Well, and I said this when I first got here.
As a New Yorker?
Yeah. I mean, I think that, okay, so now we're going to get a little political because unfortunately when you work in education, it gets a little political. So I think that just because the way that the state is being run doesn't mean that communities can't come together and build a better community. And sometimes a change happens that way. So my favorite musician is Dave Matthews, and he's all about change. And so he's like, listen, the change in America is probably going to happen in the South, right? Because New York will do what New York does and be different, and California will do what California does. But if you want to create progressiveness, and I'm not talking in the political sense, I'm talking like economic development can be considered progressive, right? Sometimes that happens in communities, and I think what Northwest Arkansas offers is a community working together in a pretty awesome way. Like sometimes I'll just be out and people will know me and I've only been here for like 6 weeks or whatever, how long, for 2 months maybe. But it's nice to see the community coming together and genuinely wanting to work together. And I don't think you would pick that up if you just read the New York Times about some stuff that's happening in Arkansas.
That's an interesting observation. I think it's important for all of our members to understand what it's going to be like after you leave here. How are we going to keep in touch with you? How's the community going to stay locked in on you? And what should we be looking for in the future from you as it relates to Northwest Arkansas?
Well, my mom and my sister live here, so I already booked my Thanksgiving ticket, so I'm not going anywhere. But we plan on building an office here and staying engaged. I mean, again, my family lives here, so there's no way that I wouldn't be a part of this community. But yeah, like I'm somebody that likes to say that I live on Earth, and I think Northwest Arkansas would be a stop on that Earth travels.
Well, fantastic, and thank you so much for being part of the cohort.
Thank you.
Part of our everyday here in Northwest Arkansas.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right. Well, Caleb, thank you so much for having the Fuel cohort a part of this. It's really a great opportunity for them to get the word out, get community support. So really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. We love the Fuel Accelerator program. It adds so much value to the work that we do and to the ecosystem, the community. And we love to see these companies come in and thrive and hopefully be a part of the Northwest Arkansas ecosystem for years to come.
Absolutely. That's the most exciting part, is to see these people's success here in Northwest Arkansas and as they grow beyond.
Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors, if you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.